And we are live. I'm live with Fascinating Fear. It is Wednesday, so everybody knows what that means. Here with my good friend Eddie Fear at FTNDaily.com. As always, Eddie, we're presented by Superdraft Daily Fantasy. Kind of our weekly little shindig here. We had a nice Sunday afternoon, little matinee.
Little afternoon delight. That was nice. That was nice.
This is the main event. So how you feeling?
I feel foolish, and I'll tell you why. They were like, all right, Eddie, look, you need to commit to 1 day a week. And I really think it was my choice. And I thought, well, I got to do Wednesday. It's a big day. And as someone who's working like 80 hours a week at his other job, in retrospect, all I can really think is, fuck. Not my best call. Like, I could have gotten away with a Friday, but like no one watches on Friday. And like picking Tuesday or Thursday, that's outright cowardice. Just like I won 3 games late all year, what seems like a dick move. So I couldn't get away with that. And Monday's not a fun day because I got Monday Night Football to play and I got to react to all the Sunday stuff. So, so I was kind of forced into either taking the ultimate, I apologize for my language, bitch move and being like, yep, every Tuesday, see, Fast Eddie Fear breakdown of 3 game slate. Now, I would know the fuck out of those 3 games as opposed to being lighting my ass up trying to figure out 13. But I'm outside of the regret that haunts all men as they reach my age. I'm doing quite well. Thanks.
Well, all in all, that's not too bad.
So much to talk about. Not too bad. Oh my god.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like the Jimmy Butler picture from the bubble finals where he's bent over the scores table. Like,
yes,
after ranking 26 teams, that's how I feel. I don't know about you, but like,
I've been revising and getting in, and I generally like the guys on your list.
Yeah.
There is some conversation here. I have a couple guys that would add up to 10s. I have a couple guys I'm a little less excited than you. So like we can start there. Obviously we can't like game by game this shit. And again, they just did it. And I have a huge respect for what they've done. But yeah, I'm gonna ask you to 10 Chris Boucher. I have him as my best value play on DraftKings.
Yeah, that makes sense.
I have him as actually my top guy. I just went through and read this entire thing. I have him I think it's $3,400, 24 minutes, and 28 fantasy points.
I mean, if I had him for 24, I think I'm right there with you. I had him for a little less right now, but let's talk about that disparity and why you think he's going to get that many minutes. Obviously, Nick Nurse has been hesitant, maybe to put it nicely, to give Boucher significant time this year, but they are extremely shorthanded now with Kim Birch still out,
no
OG,
Birch,
and
no
Precious
Anunoby,
Achiuwa.
No Precious.
Yeah, so
that's basically so that it depends how you have the matchups breaking down. Obviously, it gotten up to 18 minutes. It's worth pointing out that Nurse had. Let me load up my coach's comment section of my thing here. Let's see. Last he said he was solid on defense, getting better on that end of the court. He has settled in a little more, and we need more from him. The whole second unit with Boucher, Mikhailuk, Yuta brought a lot of extra energy, and Boucher is starting to understand more what we want out of him. So I'm leaning into that a little bit more. It's an incredibly cheap price tag, and I think he gets out there once you remove Precious, and the possibility you get some extra blowout time there. When I run the rotation, this is the most frequent number I get. I could see 28, I could see 18. This is where I am planting my flag.
I mean, is there any concern for you about like rookie Justin Champagnie getting in there and stealing some of those minutes? Like that was my only hesitation. But even he had a 9, and if we had the decimal rankings, he would have been at least a 9.5 for me there. Boucher, that is. I have that little bit of hesitation that the minutes could be muted, but
I mean that is the downside. But like as you look at all these other value plays that we're talking about, like if you're if we want to talk about Sunmu,
that was who I was
so much less confident in the I would have him as a 9 and not a 10. I think he's very solid.
Really?
I have him for 35. I have him for 30. What do you have him projected for? I have him for 35 or 37 minutes. I have him for 25 fantasy points, 24 and a half fantasy points.
Let me pull it up. And I had him for 37 and 28 fantasy points.
Okay, that's slightly higher rate of productivity than I would like to see. The matchup for me is nothing to be really celebrated with Cleveland there. I think the disparity of shot projection that we got last time was really relevant. If we hold on, let me make sure I had a note segment here. But in the last game, which was Nuggets, they played last, I think. Yeah, so when they played the Nuggets, 42 minutes. Okay. 6 shots, 8 assists and 6 rebounds. I will take the under on both of those. Now, he's going to get a little more ball handling. They specifically staggered Lonzo a little bit more, took him out earlier. He got a little more time with the second unit, picked up some more. I was going to say more assists. He had a really bad assist rate, but he converted 4 assists out of 20 potential assists in that game. So Lonzo, got a little bit unlucky there. But I will take the under on 8 assists for Io, and I will take the under on 6 rebounds. And I don't know, dude's gonna play a metric butt ton of minutes, and obviously now Thomas is out. That's not gonna hurt him. I still have, obviously fewer minutes, as do you. So I think they go big more. I think maybe you get more time out of some of the I don't know. I'm just not
with who though. You know what I mean? They don't have anybody.
Bradley next to Vooch. I got no idea.
I mean, I just
slate breaker of the night, Darius Garland. It's actually a really nice matchup for Darius Garland.
For me, the usage for Io last game was a little bit lower than I think what we can expect. Obviously, it's not going to skyrocket, but 10% usage is lower than you can expect for a player like this.
Would you like to put on the board Chris Boucher and Io? No,
because I like both of them.
Coward. All right. Well, we don't even know what's going to happen. There's news is going to come there. Someone mentioned Darius Garland. I don't think it's it's a really good he's just been doing much better in distributing the ball and picking up a lot of assists. In the way they've been defending recently, they've been moving Lonzo down a lot more, where Lonzo is guarding 3s and even 4s from time to time. So I think he actually gets Io on him, which I like a lot for Garland. So I don't mind Garland in GPPs. If you're looking for a random guy in that price range, he's not going to project as a guy worth his price, but I think the upside's absolutely there. Didn't they lose some fouls in the early part of this game? Yeah, I think Derek Jones Jr. had 3 fouls in the first half, 4 in the game, and probably would have played low 30s in minutes. I've still seen sites projecting him as high as 36, 37 minutes. That seems a little bit high, but Derek Jones Jr. may take some of the Io minutes.
Yeah, he picked up 2 fouls almost 7 minutes into the first quarter, then didn't pick up his 3rd till the last play of the first half. Okay. Picked up his 4th. Played a couple more minutes into the 3rd quarter. He did lose a few minutes.
I saw one site of projections that had him for what I think 37 minutes or something like that, which to me seemed very ambitious. But can you play Derek Jones and Io together? Sure. There's going to be very rarely you'll ever list 2 guys who collectively cost $8,000, and the answer to that question will be yes. That would be an incredibly rare circumstance, especially when you pick 2 guys who should be not complementary, but certainly not cutting each other off very much. So yes, you can certainly play those guys together with no issue.
I know there's a couple or some of the Superdraft multipliers not showing up, getting on a fix, or multipliers I should say, on our ranks, Eddie. So I'm getting that fixed as we speak. But yeah, man, you got 19 Matt Thomas minutes to distribute, right? And probably Devin Dotson probably picks up a chunk of those. Troy Brown Jr. probably picks up a few of those too. And then the rest, I would think, go to Derek Jones Jr. But yeah, man, to me, Io's just a great play, and Derek Jones Jr. is one notch below that.
Yeah, I think Derek Jones Jr. as All right, so there's a couple things here. I think Derrick Jones Jr. ends up spending a lot of the game guarding Evan Mobley, which makes me one of those rare days that even at their prices, I would prefer Mobley to Jared Allen, where I did pick one of those guys to try to get a piece of this game, and they both project just fine. But that not the best matchup for him, and his scoring a little more frenetic. I'm fine getting to Derrick Jones Jr. But yeah, I have Sunmu. I would have him a tier down from you. I will give you my value, guys. Someone's saying, can you talk about Zvi Mikhailuk? I don't mind him. I think you can get there. One of the reasons I like Zvi, and one of the reasons I apparently like Boucher a lot more, is the fact that they both do really carry a giant upside that I worry about on some of these either guys. Like I think Zvi is more likely to get me 40 fantasy points than Io. Like I really, again, the usage was really small, and I don't think that's representative. I think he gets more than a shot per 7 minutes up.
Mm-hmm.
I think that is likely, but I also think the rebound, like I do not expect him to be a terribly productive player, and that matchup's gonna be slow as balls. So, like, yeah, I do think he will take. Let's assume he plays 37, 38 minutes, and maybe that's low. Maybe he plays 42 minutes again. You tell me the number of minutes he plays starts with a 4. Yeah, that does a lot for me. Okay.
Sure.
But let's assume he plays 40 minutes, and let's assume he takes, 10 shots in 40 minutes. There's a shot per 4 minutes as opposed to the shot per 7 minutes he took last time. So I'm upping his shot frequency by like 60%. Let's say he shoots pretty well again. Let's say he shoots 6 for 10 from the field and 3 for 4 from 3. Okay, that's a pretty good shooting night from him. Like, okay, now he's got 17 points or something, gets to the free throw a couple times. 3, like he projects fine. I think he's a solid night. You can put him in any lineup. He's a little more cashy for me. I just think it's more likely that Boucher gets entirely back in Nurse's good graces, and they don't need to go that big. Like Toronto can run. One of the reasons that I likened him to Zvi was you may get a situation where they just go small at a ton of the time. There are no overpowering bigs on OKC, really. It's like, we got to get out there. Like, you're going to have Nurse doing very Nurse things on defense where he's just going to, let Darius Beasley chuck and just sort of ignore him. And so maybe they just go super small and slide down Scotty Barnes, and you get infinite time out of Trent, and, Fred is very well rested, and maybe they just end up going super small and Yuta gets more time. So, like, is it possible you only get like the lowest number of minutes barring injury, something incredibly freaky, or like a early third quarter blowout that you get out of Boucher is like, I think 16. Like, you give me 60 minutes Boucher, I'd be surprised, but that would not be like earth shattering. And then he would project for like 19 fantasy points, which still isn't great, but he just needs to be a little productive against a team that's ass out garbage and is they turn the ball over infinite times. I don't know. I just like the chance of seeing an enormous number out of him. And there's a real chance he stays out there in a blowout. Now, maybe they run Champ and, Banton obviously would be out there, and Barnes obviously would be out there, and like maybe Boucher isn't out there in that lineup, but I think he is. Like, if at the end of the day I saw Chris Boucher with 30 minutes and 48 fantasy points, I'd be like, yeah, that tracks. Like, it would not really be that shocking to me, and he would still be out there at the end of the game if they sit Fred and Pascal down. So I don't know, just the mental impression of the odds of getting a absolutely redonkulous score out of him. This happened last time. This was Sunday or last Wednesday. We had the same thing where some piece of chalk was in there, and I was like, yeah, I'm just sucking that up and playing them, and they went absolutely the hell off. I don't know what it was, but we had some piece of chalk value at 3K who had 22 in the
Gary Harris.
So we hit that, and he was fine. But no, there was someone, I think it was Sunday. I can't believe I don't remember this, but there was someone where I was just like, yeah, we're just going to suck it down and play that guy.
Yeah, you're right. I don't remember who it was, though.
I can't remember who it was, but I just remember being like, yeah, he's gone off. I'm like, okay, good. We got that right. I remember just being like, yeah, I'm not running away from that. And I'm Mr. Avoid the goddamn chalk when possible. A, I don't think he's that much chalk. And B, I don't know that it seems so much more likely to me. And again, it's got to do with a lot with like Nurse thinks about him. So like he's on Nurse's mind. If you watch like Nick Nurse, the last hour of comments I've seen, he's talked about Chris Boucher for 10 minutes of it. That's a fucking lot. So Like, I think he wants to see him out there kicking some ass. So anyhow, that's a lot of time to spend on one guy. Do you think fading Harden tonight is a smart thing, or do we eat the chalk? Is a question. Let's use that as a way to segue into James Harden, because obviously we have a lot to cover, and that was a lot of time on
Sure.
But Boucher
to answer your question, though, it was Ish Smith on Sunday, I believe, or maybe Cody Martin, but it was the COVID Hornets that we were targeting on Sunday.
Yeah, was it Ish? Like, I know, and I feel like Ish doesn't feel right, but I definitely said, all right, we're gonna move on. That doesn't feel right. Is fading Harden tonight the right thing? Okay, well, how long do we think James Harden is going to be? Like, let's really sit down here and talk about it. It's a big fucking number. So, I think James Harden will be owned. I'm going to say 41%.
I was going to say 45. Kyle has 43, splitting the difference there.
Okay. So we're in the ballpark there. I'm looking at two other sites, and they have 38 and 32. So we are collectively high. And again, when I err in this, if I'm being appropriately self-constructive, I err high on giant slates. Like, I've been doing this on Wednesdays where I'm just like, I'm a little too high on. I remember I did Jokic versus someone last week, and I always get the proportions right. But I occasionally get that, like, that may be just too much on a 13-game goddamn slate for a guy who costs 11 and change. So I suspect that ownership is approximately correct. I do not come away from that with a strong sense of, oh, God, get the hell away from that. I don't know what the line on this game is now. I think it was only 6 or 7 points because they're in. Obviously, the Nets are on a back-to-back. That's why everyone's fucking resting. They're in Houston.
I see 3.5 now.
3.5.
Opened at 6.
5 or 6 at the. Yeah, okay. So 3.5 now, which is good. So maybe I like them a little more than that. Maybe that ends up being a little low for me. But regardless, there's a lot of strong value plays people are very, very excited about, more so than me, obviously, on some of them. And we should talk about what we expect from Brooklyn all the way through with Claxton and Millsap, and I'm gonna reproject how I think. I'm gonna spend 30 good seconds on getting as close as I can on Brooklyn, and then give you my favorites on that team.
Sure.
I mean,
with the litany of guys that are out, Joe Harris, KD, Marcus Aldridge. And I took Blake Griffin off as well. Do you think Blake gets back into the rotation here tonight with Aldridge out?
I'm going to guess no, that it isn't necessary.
Claxton now.
Right.
Although Claxton played some like mid-20s in minutes last night and had only played 3 minutes from October 25th until the beginning of the game last night. So like I was actually surprised to see Aldridge sit because I thought if they were going to kind of pull back on any of the bigs, it would have been Claxton. But apparently not.
I think Claxton will start at center. So we are going to know pretty soon. But I think they will start Claxton at center, and he'll play 20 to 24 minutes, and I think that's pretty great. I think he's still at the slightly above the minimum. But we have a whole thing with James Johnson, Bruce Brown, Bembry, Cam Thomas. There's obviously a lot going on here. So I'm just rereading one last batch of comments and then looking at 2 other pieces of precedence from Nash and trying to do a minutes projection. And I will have that in about 20 seconds or something. I have James Harden. If he's going to be 41 to 45% owned, if we're right in that range, I suspect I would have more. I think there are other places to get interesting and different, and he projects for me as the highest scoring player on the slate by 10 fantasy points. Like I have him well above everyone. I think it might actually be by 12 fantasy points. But my last projection, which is going to change because I just changed some minutes and values and things here, are that if he plays 36 minutes, which I end up with as a projection, which I think is too high. I'm going to drop that down to 35. And for reference, whenever I talk about minutes, I'm talking about actual average minutes if you play this game in this situation a million times. One of the absolute worst things other sites do that drives me crazy is they're like, well, we don't count the possibility of blowouts. Not that there's a huge blowout risk here, but it's literally the opposite of what we do for everything else. We talk about like we factor in foul trouble and the odds the ball goes in and the ball doesn't go in and all these other various things. And then it's just like there's a 20-point line, but we're just projecting him for his full minutes. Drives me out of my fucking mind. If there's a 20-point line, on average, he's going to play less minutes. You can't just ignore that because you have trouble computing it. And that's why they do it. They're like, oh, it's a 20-point line. If the guy would normally in a vacuum play 36 minutes, is that 33? Is that 32? They don't know how to do that. So they're just like, fuck it, we're not doing it. I hate that answer. So because he played, I think 42 minutes last night, I have James.
That's why you think it gets knocked back? That was my question. He's been playing 40 minutes consistently.
Yeah, I don't want to go just on my memory from this. So I'm going to take just a second and look at the back-to-backs this year in which he's played.
Sure. Just did on the 3rd and the 4th earlier this week, 36 and 40.
Right, it was 36 and 40. Yeah. So I think the combination of blowout either way, various other shit, etc. Now, there is a narrative thing here, which is another thing I think the industry handles poorly, in which people just go like, I'm ignoring that. I understand it's difficult to quantify.
Yeah.
Him going back to Houston is a very real thing. This is second time back to Houston since?
It can only be the second, right? They only play once.
I believe this is it. This is second time back, and he had a very good game the first time. I don't remember the individual stats on that, but so I guess my point would be, yes, I think if I built one lineup, my first two guys, and it would probably be Chris Boucher and James Harden.
Yeah, so you said you have him about 10 fantasy points over the field. Is Jokic your second?
My last one I just did is 66 and a quarter.
Okay. But is Jokic the second highest projected player for you? I have those guys a little bit closer, like 7.5 points off. But
I have Jokic and then Embiid not far behind him.
Yeah, that's where I'm at too.
Where do you have them? Where do you have Jokic? Because I hear other people who seem a little bigger a fan of Jokic than I am. So let's talk about that matchup real quick. Let's just talk as quick as we can and spam people with information. Let's do that. This game also close. There's a thing here. What was it? They play again tomorrow.
The Nuggets.
Just apropos of nothing, the Nuggets play again tomorrow. That was what it was. I wanted to forget not to mention something on this game. Was stuck in the back of my head. That was it. Is that they play again tomorrow.
Any idea who, like, do you think we get like a Will Barton rest or Jokic rest or anything like that on the front or the back end?
Yeah, what is the deal with Barton? Because there's been I'm not going to answer that call. What was it I thought might be going on with Barton today? Isn't he, like, did he get confirmed in? Like, he was questionable illness. Right, he was sick. So if Barton goes out, now we have a great Bones Highland conversation and a great Monty Morris conversation, or even like one of those guys who could really do some impressive stuff at very little ownership. Like, there's a lot of guys who can have monster games in these situations at like no ownership. Tate, Eric Gordon. Like, ain't no reason to own Eric Gordon. He projects to be in a really good spot. I would go after some upside there. Like, I have a lot of passing interest in a lot of these guys. But let me all right, so Brooklyn. Okay, I think I've got it. All right, so we changed that around here. This may change my Harden number. It's coming right on top. So I will do that first. My order of preference for Brooklyn guys, and that's funny. This gives me an exact tie for Claxton and Johnson on value ranking. So I have Harden, then Claxton and Johnson, then Brown, then a bigger gap, then basically Bembry, Thomas, Mills. And you can do cute things with Blake. There's a question if you even get a Blake back in there. Like, you can do Millsap. Like, it's really tough to look at the minutes here. My last projection came up with 17 for Blake and 14 for Millsap. Javon Carter's in there for 10. 22 for Cam Thomas, 30 for Bembry, 27 for Bruce Brown. That number could be 5 higher. 26 for James Johnson, 23 for Claxton. Those guys end up landing right about on each other for value at those prices. And again, Johnson available at forward as opposed to Klaskin or Boucher for cash single entry. I think they're both going to be really good. So if one of them is confirmed to be starting and the other not, it's the starting one. If they're both confirmed to be starting, I would play Chris Boucher.
I would as well. I really don't think he catches the start, though. I think you're going to see Svi.
Yeah, I think that is the more likely scenario. I'll go 65-35 against, but that's what I want if I'm playing him. Like I want 17% ownership and not fucking 38. So no problem.
A couple lineups here. No surprises for the Thunder. SGA, Dort, Giddey, Beasley, JRE, Cavs, Garland, Okoro, Markkanen, Mobley, Allen, Bulls. Excuse me. Lonzo, Io, Zach LaVine, Derek Jones Jr., Vucevic, Sixers, Maxey, Curry, Green, Harris, Embiid, and Hassan Whiteside is out with a butt injury.
Okay, really relevant for Gobert. Again, this is a whole thing, but like Quinn Snyder has a real thing that like when they don't have a competent backup, they run extra minutes on Gobert. So literally it changes Gobert's minutes projection in a pretty good matchup from it's going to be 35.5 to 37.5. Like it's a relevant cookie. Like I don't it's still not a great spot against a much better Minnesota defense, but Towns isn't 100%, and you have a chance on one of those 16 to 20 rebounding spots out of Gobert, so he would not be out of play for me. Like Hassan Whiteside being in would limit him 2 minutes, which is 2.5, 3 fantasy points. Thoughts on Hero? Yeah. Were we to have another Hero or Lowry bet today, I would definitively take Hero. These are two teams that allow just butt tons of 3-pointers. And I don't think the adjustments, Caleb Martin being out, is going to change things a little bit. But my, I don't know, easiest fit place. I think Miami has played the Bucks twice this year. Yeah, and they were both blowouts. One in which the Bucks won by 40, and one in which Miami won by 20. I may have gotten that backwards. But I think Tyler Hero is the highest scoring member of the Heat in both games. If you want to look that one up. And it would not surprise me, especially with the adjustments that they've had to make in the absence of Lopez and everything else. That's the way to get to this team. I really like both these guys at their prices. I really like getting to one of them. I don't think they're owned as high as they should be, the numbers that I've been seeing. So yeah, I'm not I have Hero pretty high, and I've seen him varied as far as a projection from okay to outstanding on the various sites that I've looked at. So I do think they end up being not as popular as maybe they should be. Now I've seen places suggesting that is Bruce Brown still a 10 as your fourth favorite net? No, Bruce Brown would not be a 10 for me. I don't have a huge issue with it. And again, the situation has been evolving, so I've only adjusted a few rankings as the day goes on to try to optimize them a little bit. He still looks very good for me. Whether he gets the start is sort of an interesting piece of this whole thing.
I think he definitely gets the start. It's not gonna be Cam Thomas.
Yeah, I don't think it's gonna be Cam Thomas, but you may get some weird, I don't know, Millsap. I'm just kind of, we'll see.
By the way, Harrow in the 2 Bucks matchups, Eddie did lead the team with 27 in the opener. It was the other Miami white guy, Max Strus, 25 points in that second matchup.
Sure, I meant like fantasy points, in which case I think a little more likely that I'm correct. But either way, he had 2 good games, both in blowouts.
Led them in fantasy points that second game. Not great though. 15, 9, and 6, 4 of 17 from the floor at what I imagine was a low 7K price. Didn't kill you, but didn't probably get you to the top of the leaderboard.
I'm just saying.
Taj Gibson starting for Nerlens.
Taj is starting? What happened to Nerlens? Oh, Nerlens is out.
Okay. Nerlens is out.
I expected, that's not a big deal, but I expected Taj to get in now.
Here's our first board bet of the day. Bruce Brown, James Johnson straight up. Give me Bruce.
I'll take James.
Okay, there you go. Let me write it down.
Put it on the board. Yeah. I'll take next out.
Oh, boy. I need to put this into a.
Am I up 1 or 2 now? I'm gonna be honest. I'm a little disappointed that you haven't caught up and whooped me around a little.
2, 9 to 7. No, after our split last week.
All right. Yeah, I have him projected. I will give you my exact projection numbers for him. I have James Johnson currently projected for not that much more than I thought. I have James Johnson for 23.5 fantasy points. I have Bruce Brown for 22 3/4. Safe to say that if Luka is rolled out, Brunson becomes a 9 at worst. Again, you want it as late as possible, but I can't remember Brunson's price offhand. I apologize. I know Luka was dealing with the wrist yesterday and a lot, and I probably should have prepped for him today, but I didn't. In my prep this morning and at lunch, I didn't prep Luka out, so I don't remember what Brunson costs, but I'm assuming he's 5-ish.
Brunson, yeah, I think 5.2. Let me double check.
Yeah, so yeah, it would be 9 or possibly 10. It's tough on a slate this big.
5.4 now. Sorry.
Yeah, one of the tough things about doing numerical rankings, as Zach is certainly learning as the year progresses, is you have days where there are 18 really, really good plays that aren't separated by that much, and days where there's really only 2 good plays and then a glut of guys who are a little bit worse. So do you have 18 10s and then 2 10s, or do you kind of sketchily compartmentalize your 18 10s? And at that point, like a 10 versus a 9 on one day doesn't mean what a 10 versus 9 means. And there's no right answer there. But you could do today's slate and come up with a lot of guys at 10. Like you could really bump that number at 12 or 15. And Zach, who usually sets it up and then I deal with it later in the day, defers to only having a few guys at 10, which I think is just fine. You're strongly landing on these guys. Like my 10s would be Harden, Boucher. I don't know if I get to a member of the Heat. I don't know if I individually land on any of the Nets without a starting lineup. If you gave me Claxton starting at center, probably Claxton would make it there, although you're spending a center spot, which is kind of expensive. Norm Powell, I think you can make a really strong argument for Norman Powell. Do you want to go there for a second? I mean, that game, a massive game.
I think we need the Simons news for that, right?
Yeah. He's still going to project extremely well. Like it correlates well with Steph. He could get yanked out of there a little faster, but they're incredibly thin. Even if Simons is in, it's really hard for me to not see Norm Powell taking 20 shots if he plays a full game. And the price and the position at small forward. So here we go.
And I think
for Powell or the Blazers guys with significant blowout risk. I mean, yes, of course. Like, they're the 16-point damn dog in Golden State.
The safest one's DSJ. He's going to play in the blowout.
Yeah, I believe that Dennis Smith Jr. is probably they fucking juiced his price on DK in a hurry. You got to.
They did. Superdraft lagging behind a little bit, 1.85x still on DSJ. So I think he's a nice play there.
I don't know. We actually need to do a better job of actually stretching that. Like what we do is we go like total garbage is 2.0, and then we make guys who are kind of garbage like 1.8. And frankly, we should just say total garbage is just unplayable and start making guys who are kind of garbage 2.0 because, as you've seen, they're not eligible. Like a guy who's projected to score 24 fantasy points, unless we bump that scale out to a 3, isn't useful at all anyway. So we need to make, like, how many fantasy points can you project Dennis Smith Jr. for? He's at a 2.0. So, like you mentioned, we're lagging behind. I have Dennis Smith Jr. projected for 24 fantasy points. He's unplayable at a 2.0 to me, unless you think he goes absolutely apeshit nuts. If you can project him for 36 minutes, maybe he gets 34 fantasy points. And on a 13-game slate, his 2.0 would sneak him in there at 68. Like, you need some fucking help with that.
Yeah. I mean, 39 and 37 minutes the last 2 for him, but part of that blowout, that he got, especially against Boston, and Anthony Simons also being out, But, like, Eddie, maybe he plays 36, 37 minutes anyways because CJ was around in that Boston game.
Right. Yeah, no, I think that's absolutely reasonable. So, assuming PG is out, would you prioritize Reggie or still go DSJ? They're asking both of us. I would then prioritize Reggie between those 2 plays pretty significantly, but they're going to give DSJ at the time. Like I like both those guys. Eric Gordon or Powell on FanDuel playing Harden run back. I like them both a lot. The FanDuel price, I think Gordon ended up being the slightly better one. If 50% of people are playing Harden, does it make sense to pivot to Giannis or Jokic? That's about the number that I think is appropriate. Like I haven't projected that much higher. So I've got alerts going and I'm scanning and I'm looking for news and anything where we can find out that, we expect his time to be. He played 42 minutes yesterday, but barring anything extra, that game is only like a 3-point game now, and he's going to have to do a lot of fucking heavy lifting. So no, not at 50. If you think he's 64% owned, then yeah.
Yeah, and let's see. Jake chiming in. Glad I'm getting in on the DSJ discussion. If Simons is out, he has to project for 38 minutes, 35 or so.
If Simons is out,
Yeah.
he projects for infinitely more minutes.
Yeah.
Sorry, I don't know if I was unclear about that. I have Simons in as well.
Yeah.
I like anyone named Anthony. I'm a big Anthony fan.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like kinetic stuff. Any interest in Nurkic if stacking that game? Well,
he did get 30 minutes last game.
Yeah, but Billups said he looked tired. Like Billups literally said they had to leave him in there even though he was looking tired. And I was at 30 minutes. So the biggest reason that bothers me is I'm losing my potentially 36 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
Like if I play Nurkic, what I'm hoping is, Jesus God, there's a chance that he plays 36 minutes and gets me 60 because they're gonna like leave him in there. And this is, there's some drama here, and there's so. Yeah, for me, I think Nurkic is absolutely fine to play, but I'm just frustrated by him not being more exceptional to play at 69. Nice price, obviously.
Very nice.
But he's good. He's not outstanding because it seems unlikely. Even the last game was pretty close, if I recall correctly, and he played 30 minutes. And for me, that was kind of like,
Luka Doncic is a game time decision with that ankle soreness, so obviously we will pay attention to that. Will Barton did not go through shoot around with that illness. Another game time decision. Sterling Brown out again for the Mavericks. We talked about Nerlens Noel being out. Andre Iguodala out again for the Warriors. Corey Joseph in for the Pistons. The Knicks will start the same four they did yesterday. Burks, Fournier, Barrett, Randall with Taj Gibson at the 5. Pacers, no surprises here. Brogdon, Duarte, LeVert, Sabonis, Turner. Pistons will start Hayes, Cunningham, Bay, Grant, and Stewart. Eddie, one of the 3 games that's going off right at lock here is the rematch, Philadelphia and the COVID Hornets. Let's talk both of those sides. Tyrese Maxey is back for Philly. Charlotte will have the same guys active, if I recall correctly. Priced up across the board and for good reason. Any priorities for you from this game? I love Embiid, and I think getting a Charlotte guy is a smart idea.
Yeah, I obviously love Embiid. Give up the whatever 65 burger he put up in the last game. Had an incredible, was higher actually. Had an incredible game, and the coach basically said like, yeah, they didn't have anyone who guarded him, so we did that thing, and it was like, did they play tomorrow? Hold on. I'm getting myself a little confused. I thought Philly played tomorrow, and that bothered me a little bit. Because Charlotte was on the back-to-back when they first
Philly does play tomorrow.
Yeah, Philly does play tomorrow. So, again, another thing with, back of your head that both Embiid and Jokic do play tomorrow. I don't think, and given Doc's style, he tends to figure that out on the back end. Mm-hmm. So, sorry, long story short, Maxey being back just sort of takes on a slate this big and juicy. There's some uncertainty. We'll talk about Charlotte first. If I had a priority, I don't know. Cody Martin ranks the best of them. I don't love him, but guard and forward eligible, $5,000, projects for like 35 minutes and 30 fantasy points. Perfectly cromulent, reasonable play. Feel free to have some. I would have 10, 12%. Feel they'll have that or a little bit more. Hayward is probably the guy I like most in GPPs. He will not shoot that badly. He should have had a couple more assists realized. I do think there's still a very reasonable ceiling there. So he's sort of a guy I like getting a piece of in sort of a GPP context. Yeah. And that would be it for the Charlotte side of the ball for me. Anyone you want to bring up before we look across the ball at Philadelphia for a second?
Cody Martin, my favorite there, just the cheap price, 35, 36 minutes in all likelihood, and a decent fantasy producer. I think he's my favorite. And I would actually prefer Kelly Oubre. I just think he's more active, a better fantasy producer, a little bit more aggressive as a player. Sure. I would take him for the $100 discount, but no issue getting to Hayward or even Miles Bridges at 8-2.
Yeah, I think most people buy in. It's sort of an ownership thing for me with Hayward.
Sure.
I like that a little more than Oubre, but certainly nothing wrong
Start
there.
at the 1, too, Hayward.
Yeah. And then around the other side, I have Embiid and Harris, and then with Maxey back, it all gets pretty messy for me. I like both Embiid and Harris. Mm-hmm. Tobias Harris has obviously been a movable feast this year, but took a big old pile of shots in that last game. I still think projects perfectly well for just under 40 fantasy points in this game. Nothing here a priority beyond those two guys. Once Maxey came back, I have a page of notes here on Seth Curry, etc., that I can just ignore.
How about Washington, Detroit? Any priorities there? Because I have really none, but there's some interesting guys for tournaments, especially if you're running multiple lineups.
Beef stew, if you're running for tournaments, in the very limited time that he's seen. Well, first of all, have we gotten a Washington lineup yet? Because they were talking about maybe
they came out super early. I believe it's the same 5. I'll double check.
Okay, because they were talking about making some changes there and a couple other places. I think Beef Stew is interesting in tournaments if you wanted to get there. Sadiq Bey, 5,300 at the spot in which he could get there, but no one projects match. Obviously, Cade Cunningham, saw a great game coming off. It's exciting to see that. I would probably slightly rather go Hayward for the same price, and I have Hayward projected for I think about 1.5 points higher. But Hayward's forward, and Cade's guard. I think that's where I land on that decision. So nothing super else for Detroit that I see as a huge priority. Finally got a decent game out of Beal. Price coming down to 8,600. Matchup's really good. You can certainly take some tournament flyers on Bradley Beal here. Past that, probably Montrez over Gafford at this juncture if I'm going to spend $5K on one of those guys in tournaments. But no, nothing that seems to bear further conversation at this juncture.
Yeah, and same 5 for the Wizards. Dinwiddie, Beal, KCP, Kuzma, and Daniel Gafford. Gafford and Trez Harrell's prices are down to a point. Same with kind of Spencer Dinwiddie, where I would include them in my pool. I just don't think they're going to project well enough, nor do I have the interest to bump them up enough to get any significant volume on any of those Washington guys.
Yep.
Well, I guess I got it wrong. There are 4 games here at lock: Knicks and Pacers. We talked a little bit about the Knicks with Taj getting in there for Nerlens. Mitchell Robinson, apparently he's a 5 times a better player off the bench fantasy wise. Last night did get 5 stocks. I think a cheap double. So that was important on that 3-game slate tonight or last night. But tonight I don't see any priorities from this Knicks team.
No, I will give you my last batch on the Knicks, and I had the Knick I was most interested in playing being Ronald Barrett, which I'm not super interested. Taj with the news there, I did reproject that gave me 22 minutes and 15 3/4 fantasy points. Yeah, no, you can do it. It's certainly not weird if he gets 26 minutes or 30 fantasy points somehow. Like, this is the minimum. He's starting. It's reasonably safe. I would rather Boucher because I think I'm on a 10% chance Boucher gets me 50 and a 0.000001% chance Taj Gibson gives me 50. So it's a big slate. I'll go that way. But you can Taj. Not many people are going to get there.
Yeah. On the other side, I could see some people getting to Karis LeVert, who's been scoring it well, but he's still not pulling in really any peripherals. So it's something that I just can't prioritize. Chris Duarte's price has come up a couple hundred. Sabonis jumped up to 10-3 after that massive near 60 DK point performance, 30, 10, and 6 against the Wizards 2 nights ago. Anybody you would maybe sneakily get to here? Miles Turner 6-1 is a little interesting, but nothing jumps out to me.
No, nothing. I have LeVert as the best play on the team by quite a bit, and I have very solid. It's not a matchup I particularly like, but the Knicks defense has been really bad. For a Tibbs team, I give him a lot of credit when he takes some shit and turns it into gold. He's turned some gold into shit on this team of recent. They're allowing way more threes than they should be, and they're allowing way more open threes than they should be. That's a very reasonable situation to be like, oh, okay, what's going on there? So, for that reason, I can get there. But they're all priced, and there's a lot of mouths, and there's just other priorities for me on this slate. So I can get to LeVert. Holiday is still out, but just the price on everyone else isn't terribly appealing for me. So.
Interesting question here, and I kind of want to lead that into the other side of that Brooklyn game. I don't think we really talked too much about the Houston Rockets.
We should, too.
Triple H was asking about Christian Wood or Pascal Siakam, and I think if price doesn't matter, I think I'm getting to Christian Wood in this matchup with no Kevin Porter Jr., no Jalen Green. How would you treat the Rockets?
I don't want to say it because I curse Christian Wood when I say his name. Like, I'm normally not that superstitious about things. I have Christian Wood for 33 minutes and 42 and a quarter fantasy points, and I have Pascal Siakam for 35 minutes and 41 fantasy points. So, basically sitting there in a tie.
Mm-hmm.
So it's gonna now Pascal saving you a lot of money. Like, Christian Wood is not cheap.
Right.
But that's, you obviously get some run back with, so it's really going to depend on your team and correlation, and if you have the money to spare and a center spot, and like, there's a lot going on in that question. So they rank very similarly for me. You need the you need both games to stay close, but you need OKC to keep it a game in Toronto, isn't like Toronto an 8-point favorite or something? It's a number.
It is.
It does.
7.5 last I refreshed. Check again. Yeah, still 7.5 on my screen.
Gotcha. So, I think that's honestly a little generous, but
sure. Let's see. I mean, here's a Houston question for you, Eddie. We saw Dan Tice get out there, get the start last game. I personally thought that was more about the matchup against.
He specifically, coach came out and said it was all about the matchup. I actually don't have him playing.
Yeah, I think that's fair. Yeah,
I actually don't have him stepping on the court.
Yeah,
and the coach specifically said sometimes he won't step on the court, and he's been very professional about that. So they actually spent a fair bit of time in Jan recent situation giving him praise for being flexible with the fact that just sometimes dude ain't gonna play. So
yeah, our Armani Brooks looks like a strong value and a really strong pivot in tournaments to me if he does indeed get the start again. Just got to hope he makes more than one shot. He's kind of feast or famine from the field in the limited amount of time that I've been able to either tout him or play him myself in the past. But at 3.8, that's something that could open up here in a very short while.
Yeah, Anthony Edwards, certainly there's a giant ceiling there. So giving you the short version, I generally end up being more of a fan. There are ways it can obviously go a little sticky, but as that situation evolved during the day, I ended up with a lot of ant minutes issues. But the ceiling is always going to be there without D'Lo. So you have Gobert around, which is a real thing. There's been feast or famine in the past. He's had issue with teams with really good rim protection. He couldn't get into the paint, and they would guard him a little more tighter, and he wouldn't get his outside shots. But he's played really well recently against Miami and against Golden State, and that was Miami with Bam in there. So generally, I'm landing pretty solidly on it, and I think you can certainly get it. So, single entry fade Boucher, yeah, that'll be fine. He's certainly not a must. There's a lot of very good value. I will do new value rankings, and do players under, I don't know, $4,500 and in order of just projected fantasy points without getting too much into it. And I currently have Boucher, Claxton, Derek Jones Jr., James Johnson, Nasir Little, if he plays any sort of real game, hits next for me. Duncan Robinson, Anthony Simons, Armani Brooks, all good men and thorough. And I'm sure I'm missing some. And then I hit the Sunmu, by the way. Your boy.
Well, I've come a long way from not knowing how to say his name about 5 weeks ago, and then
Ayo Dosunmu, right? Am I getting that wrong? Okay.
Yeah. Or I think it's Dosunmu.
Dosunmu?
Dosunmu. Yeah.
Dosunmu? Is it a silent NM? Is it like
I believe so.
See?
Rob jumped in the chat last time I mashed his name up a few weeks ago and told me off and gave me the right pronunciation. So I've been saying Ayo Dosunmu.
Yeah, you're close if not on it. This is we have Ayo Dosunmu and Anthony Simons playing tonight. So this is just mother of Christ. Okay, so we'll get into some news tank. Desumu is correct. Okay, so silent it. See, it's one of those things where I've only heard two people say it, and they get it wrong, and so it takes a while. Like I got Anthony Simons wrong for a long time because there was someone on fucking television saying Simmons for like 2 games. And I was like, that guy's on TV.
Another place that I wanted to get to before we get to lock here in less than 5 minutes now is the other side of that Dallas game. Obviously, still waiting on Luka news, but these Memphis guys are priced pretty nicely, specifically Dillon Brooks, in my opinion. I've been chasing this Dillon Brooks game for a while now, and it looked like he was going to have it last game, and it was just fine. 40 at 6'4" is you're more than happy with that. Yeah. But the 8 for 21 from the field, very Dillon Brooks-ish, but left a little bit to be desired.
Volume and inefficiency.
Yeah.
That's
so
what your boy will get you. Yeah, he's my highest. I have Brooks, Bain, Melton, Adams is all very reasonable plays, and certainly in a tournament you can Jaren Jackson, Tyus Jones. So like I'm drawing it on those 6, but those 6 guys are going to play 30 minutes, give or take a 2 either side. Funaki's going to come in a little under that. Melton I have under that as well. But yeah, against a limited Dallas team without Luka, I almost worry they whoop them a little bit. But yeah. I will go as like Brooks projects as the best for me. I'm always a big Melton mark, and of those 6 players I just listed, he is the cheapest. So I think I probably end up there a little more than the others. Yeah, and these 2 teams just played. I think I want to say 4 games ago, or 2 games ago.
Yeah,
I think they played on the 4th of this month. Rather, that's what I was thinking.
I believe you're correct. Fox or Edwards?
And in that game, by the way, Desmond Bain had the 50 burger.
Yeah, Desmond Bain, man, I've said it multiple streams in a row now, but he's just been fantastic. Like, for him to work out like that for the Memphis team, like, fantastic. They got
Yeah.
Would you Fox or Edwards? It's Edwards for me.
It's going to, assuming correlation is completely irrelevant, you have no other players in either game. I would Edwards.
Well, how about that?
I have them very close, but I would Edwards.
I guess we'll talk. We should talk after lock Sacramento, Orlando, because I think there are some interesting plays.
Yeah, there really are. The whole Orlando front court, Bamba and Carter actually both end up ranking really well for me. Edwards would be with Gobert. Yeah, if you have Gobert, you do stack them. They won't be unowned, but there will be enough ownership in the early window that Zinger won't get nearly enough ownership. Yeah, there is a good conversation that we should have had 10 minutes ago. Would be how we expect ownership to change based on the positionalities of what locks on the early slate. So we're about to lock Embiid. We're going to lock the Charlotte game, and it'll be really interesting. We're about to lock the Sunmu, who is only guard eligible. So it'll be interesting to see. Not a lot of ownership on Washington, Detroit, Pacers, Knicks, even Cleveland won't have a ton. I think I end up on Garland or Mobley there. If I'm looking at that team. And again, we haven't said it, by the way. Zach LaVine, much more reasonably priced on FanDuel, feel free, is not out of play on DraftKings.
Yeah.
Like, it is an incredibly good matchup for him. Feel free. Dude may take 30 shots. Like, he's going to go. He's going to get mostly a Coro and, nothing bad with what he's about to have in front of him. So, yes, by all means, enjoy yourself. Why is this game projected so well? He played 18 minutes last game. Well, Precious Achiuwa is out now, and I think they very possibly beat the shit out of him, and I think he stays in. And I know this is ridiculous, but the way Nick Nurse talked about him, I would say go watch a video. He's like, hey, he's really starting to get, and he's come along, and I think he knows that we need him, and he's starting to understand his responsibilities. And my takeaway from watching him was, I want to see I have things I want from this guy. I think he knows what we want. I'd like to continue to engender this relationship to grow. I just got a sense that he will lean into him a little bit more. It's silly on some level, but I'm reading into having the subconscious reaction I get to seeing Nick Nurse talk like that. So.
Sure. Under a minute now, actually well under a minute, 15 seconds.
We're down to a few seconds.
Yeah, until
I am
lost.
not getting any crazy news splatter.
Yeah. 4 of the 13 games going off here at 7 Eastern. And then I think 2 more in half an hour, Milwaukee, Miami, and OKC, Toronto. Should get a Raptors lineup here any minute now.
Yes. Which I'm glad it came after lock. Again, you want just Boucher starting, and then I think you 100% it. I don't think he starts. I will go under 50% he starts, but I don't think it's 0. And that's another thing Nick Nurse will do against, a Thunder team that lost by 76 the other day. Like, yeah, I am more hopeful than many. So,
well, I'll pull up some ownership here.
all right.
And then we'll jump into a couple of the games that we didn't cover, as they weren't priorities over the last hour. And when you have 26 teams and 1 hour to do
there's
it.
13 teams. I know people are like, oh, you didn't talk at all about the Knicks and the Pacers. And it's like, yeah, it's not worth the time. Like, tough decisions about priorities. Frequently, I don't discuss guys just because I don't have anything revolutionary to say. Like, my job is to provide context for the previous show.
Caleb Martin will start for the Heat.
Oh, interesting. In and starting.
Yeah, and he's replacing Tyler Hero.
Oh.
Yeah, so Lowry, Martin, Robinson, Tucker, and Dedmon.
Yeah, it doesn't actually change a lot. Hero's going to just have slightly higher usage, and especially with no Butler and second usage and whatever. But it would, probably reduce Hero by a little bit for me. So I would be concerned if I had a significant amount.
And ownership is ready to go. So
yeah, the Herm's taking chat about the Beasley thing. I will give you my Beasley projection.
All right.
All right, there, and I'm going to have a limit on Beverly. So we'll go in here. What are we laughing on?
Just Herm. Talking to Triple H.
All right.
I guess he asked me for a minutes projection. I'll lean on Kyle there since he is the opto extraordinaire.
I have Beasley for 28.5 minutes and 22 3/4 fantasy points.
I had 28. Kyle has 27, so right in that range.
So yeah, he is just a GPP play. I think he's absolutely fine to roll out there in some percent. He does not project brilliantly, but
all right, ownership
Beasley or Beasley. There's a lot of ownership guesses. Like the only guy who's gonna be really owned is Io. So Io number 1, right?
Io number 1.
There's no one else over 20. I don't think. No one else over 20. Save me a headache.
There are some others. There is at least one other over 20. I'll say that.
Cody Martin,
number 2.
Anyhow, Io higher than I think it should be, which is that was really the reason I just kept reading the name and reading the name and reading the name. And I think it's fine. I think it's good even, but on a 13-game slate where value is going to open, this number is going to be too high. I'll say 32.
Yeah, 30.
Okay. Not horrific. Like, I don't hate the play, but like generally, yeah, I think I would go under 30. There's just going to be other value plays that project close enough that I would rather make a pivot. Anyhow, yeah, that's okay. That's good. I was worried I had a really wrong sense there, but I was just like, isn't it too much for? I mean, it's not 39. I don't know. I mean, you just say if you think he's going to play 40 minutes, like then have a great game and get 40 fantasy points. I was real good. So
Chris Boucher will start.
See, kids, it helps when you cook with the right food.
Yeah.
Do that. Yeah. See, like I swear to Christ, I'm gonna go on a rant here. I'm gonna take a selfish 2-minute rant. I just had this conversation with someone who works at Superdraft last night, and he was talking about this really difficult to project thing, and how people are like, we gotta get those numbers boiled down. And I have this conversation usually in August and September every year, because in August and September every year, some person or company advertises, you need to come check it out. We have the most accurate NBA projections. And my answer is usually, like, A, you don't. almost certainly. And B, the fact that you think that is so consequential is a phenomenal misunderstanding of what's important in daily fantasy basketball anyway. Like, and I apologize for the 12 of you in the chat who have heard this rant many times before, but like you need projections to play a DFS. So I'll try to do the short version. I'll keep this to 90 seconds if I can. DFS basketball is by far the most predictable sport, as opposed to, say, baseball, where a guy gets like 5 fucking at-bats. In basketball, you get 100 chances to score, and you score a point at a time. So as opposed to football, where you might get, I don't know, a dozen balls thrown at you or 15 carries or whatever the hell. In basketball, you get 100 opportunities to score, and you convert some of them, and you score a point here and there. So you end up with this much more projectable sport. If you're looking at, Mike Trout is going to score 0 fantasy points multiple times a month because he's going to go 0 for 5, even if he bats 300. That's just how that shit works out mathematically. So the percentage of, like, if his average fantasy points, depending on your scoring system, is 31 fantasy points a game, he still only scores between, let's say, 20 and 40, 50% of the time. Whereas if you look at LeBron James, in any given game, he's going to take between, 12 and 21 shots 88% of the time and make between, 38 and 71% of those shots 85% of the time and have 22 rebounding opportunities and convert between 38 and 62% of those and have this many assist opportunities and steals and blocks, mess it around a little bit. But at the end of the day, he ends up scoring between, again, going to pick numbers that are close but not accurate, 40 and 57 fantasy points in a regulation basketball game 77% of the time. It's just really, really, really projectable. And what that causes is everyone's projections end up being really fucking homogenous. And I know this, having hosted a show with literally 8 of the 10 best fantasy basketball players ever. And so whenever someone's like, we have the best projections, my response is usually, no, you don't. Let's test it. Let's just pick random slates. And what we're going to do is we'll take 5 of your players at random. Then we'll compare them to these 5 sets of publicly available projections. And we'll see, A, if yours are better, and B, if they're in any way fucking different. So if you look tonight at a player who has a reasonable history, not someone on back-to-back, not someone who's injured. If you look at someone who's not in a weird situation, so you don't want James Harden. If you're just like looking at a guy in a game where nothing weird is going on. So there's not any big injury history. Let's go with, Donovan Mitchell or something. Okay. So if you look at Donovan Mitchell tonight for projections, every site is going to project him for between, I'll say, 34 and 36 minutes. And every site is going to project him between, I'll say, 40 and 43 fantasy points or something like that. That is so within the margin of error that even if your claim that I project better than everyone else were accurate, which it isn't, there's not really much to gain there. Like if we look at all the sites and you look at our site, RotoGrinders, Kyle and me, and James, all this, and you looked at the projection numbers for Donovan Mitchell tonight, you're going to see 41.2, 42.1, 41.7, 42.9. Like you can't, because it's so projectable. Guy scores this many fantasy points a minute, little wiggle for the rotation, maybe this, that, and the other thing. He's going to play this many minutes because he plays this many minutes. Lobster. Like, it's just not fucking hard. So, the only way someone is like, I have the best projections is if somehow you've completely reinvented the wheel, and spoiler alert, you fucking haven't. So, what's my point? The guy who actually knows something about basketball, the reason I like fantasy basketball is it's the sport where the most important thing is actually knowing something about the fucking sport. You can beat baseball and football and hockey and wherever through data analysis. Basketball is kind of what's called a solved game. A solved game in game theory and game design is a game which has been solved and can be played perfectly. Connect 4 is a solved game. You ever play Connect 4? If you play Connect 4, and you know how to play correctly, and you play first, you can't lose. Mm-hmm. It is a solved game. I believe the other person might be able to force a tie, but it's a solved game. Tic-tac-toe is a solved game. Fantasy basketball, by the math, is pretty fucking close to a solved game. The only time anyone has better projections is when they have better minutes projections. And that is not my projections are better. That's I pay attention and know anything about fucking basketball. Like, well, I listen to the coach talk and I just think he wants to lean into that relationship right now. That advice can actually make you $100,000 or make you a rich person. Oh no, every single day. And I know that Donovan Mitchell was at 41.7, not 41.4. Fuck yourself. If you knew more about minutes, that's not a better projection. That's knowing more about basketball. End of rant. Okay.
I'm going to refresh my browser real quick because for the last 10 minutes, your audio and video hasn't been matched up for me. It's good for everybody else. But I'm
really? That's a shame.
I just saw you
middle
finish
of my
your
rant.
Yeah. So I'll be right back.
Yeah, the fucking Andrew Bogut thing. That's the same thing. Andrew, like I wasn't thinking about that. That was literally like, I think I listened to it was literally, look, I listened to the coach. I know Andrew Bogut. Literally, it was game 5 of whatever the 2017 Western Conference Finals. Bogut's minutes in that series had gone 26, 21, 19, 12. But he played really well in the 12 minutes. And the coach was like, yeah, I looked at that. And like, he had the only positive plus minus on the team. And center was garbage on the slate, but his minutes were disappearing. And so he was like 4% owned. And I said something I almost never say. If I was playing tonight, I'd have 100% Andrew Bogut. And people are like, what the fuck? But
Bogut story?
The Bogut, someone mentioned the Bogut story. So that it was the same thing. It was like, look, I listened to the coach. I think he knows.
Yeah.
They're having trouble down there anyway. I think they do this. Center sucks anyway, and he was the fucking minimum. Let's go. And yeah, he had 47 fantasy points or whatever at the minimum at 4% owned. We won.
You remember what I did that night, right? I've told you.
I didn't. You've told me this story.
I fucking full faded him.
Yeah, you full faded him. Most people full faded him, but yeah, it was like it was 4% owned, I think, or 5% owned. But literally, like on FanDuel and DraftKings, I don't know what the number is. We made $1 million. It was literally it was when I wasn't full Fast 80 Fear Madness, but there were 2,000 people watching the show.
Yeah.
And of the people watching the show, 50% played Andrew Bogut as opposed to 4% of the field at large, and we won everything. We won first, second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh on both sides. It's like, yeah, all right, it's anyway. I'm not gonna tell the Tyler Zeller story, but again, it was actually very similar. And I watch a lot of basketball, so I watch a lot of matchups, and I get a lot of shit right on big men. Because they more frequently guard each other, especially in the modern age of the NBA. Centers guard centers 92% of the time. Fours guard fours like 85% of the time. These are close to accurate numbers. And like 1, 2s, and 3s are now, it's like 60% of the time. So it doesn't always hold in coaches changing team champs. So
would you Anthony Edwards or Pascal Siakam here?
Setting, do I have Boucher? There's some negative correlation there. There's a lot going on with that question, but is Boucher 7:30? It is 7:30. So other people ain't got like 27 minutes to pile this guy in here. I'm a little bit excited.
Yeah.
Off of Nas.
I think I'm leaning Edwards because I would most likely have Boucher in my lineup.
Who did
I? It's just that Delo's
story. No, I was just sorry. It was another time I was really I made my single biggest night, which was not that much relative to some of you guys, because again, I was forced into retirement 6 years ago, more than 6 years ago now. But the biggest I ever made a night was about $100,000, and I won every tournament on FanDuel. Where I played Tyler Zeller in my one lineup. At the time, there were 7 sites. So I was playing on 7 sites. So I just built my best lineup on every site, and I put it in cash and GPPs, which worked back then. People were really dumb. Wasn't that I was that great? There were a lot of dumb people, not a lot of great information out there. So you could play it pretty close to the chest.
Sure.
Like you could just play the chalk and win a lot of GPPs. Like ownership really wasn't a thing. People were pretty fucking stupid. So it's just like, Tyler Zeller's cheap. And I think, I don't remember the story behind this, but again, coach's comments, I think he's going to get this. And 2% owned or 1% owned. And I started my one FanDuel lineup and at the minimum price, put up whatever the hell, 48 fantasy points. So yes, you can play Boucher and Siakam together. Boucher, again, very, very rare $3,200 guy, not going to be playable alongside other guy. Ayo Dosunmu. 2 fantasy points so far. There is your Ayo Dosunmu update.
What are we, 2 or 3 minutes in here?
If that.
Good start. Yeah, 2 minutes, 2 fantasy points.
Did we get a bet on the board?
Yeah, we got one. We got Neck Tat versus Brucey B there. in
That's
Houston
kind of
tonight.
That's kind of a lame one. I really feel like I should have made an anti-Ayo Dosunmu bet. I will go Ayo Dosunmu under 25 fantasy points. Would you like that bet?
On DK?
On DK.
Yeah, I mean, I have him for 28, so I would love that bet.
I will take under 25. I'm spotting you 3 points.
Put it on the board.
I actually have him. I think I have him projected for a hair over that, but because I'm beating you and I feel bad about that, I'm going.
A little salty, a little juicy.
I'm pretty intrigued by Duncan too. Yeah, like again, I wasn't. You may have noticed I was reading off the order of value plays I have by raw projection, and I hit Duncan Robinson before I hit Ayo Dosunmu, which no one else had mentioned the entire show, and it's because I reconfigured some things when Hero set aside. Right, he's got Chuck against a team that really allows you to chuck. It's all they allow. Their interior defense has been really good, but yeah, sir. Like he's not cashy. He's very much in play for Jeeps.
Are you talking about Duncan because of Herm asking about him, or are we just talking him in the context of value?
Both. I mean, I brought him up again because Herm brought him up, and I was like, yeah, I don't know if anyone noticed I randomly hit his name before I hit.
Yeah.
So same thing with like Middleton. We haven't, seen a pile of super Middleton performances, even, when we have, I think Giannis didn't play in the Miami game. And Giannis may very well be limited today. Let's talk about that a little bit because people are like, what about the pivots off Harden? How owned do you think Simons will be, assuming he's in? Does he even hit 1%? I'm serious. Yes, I will think he gets over 1%, but it's a 13-game slate, and people are going to lock a lot of fucking people before the sole. Like it is worth. Thank you for bringing this up, Jake. There are 13 games. 12 of them lock in the first hour. I don't know if you noticed.
Oh yeah, not 10 of them. There's 3.
Oh no, that's right. There's also the Sacramento and the Clippers game. You're right, but still 10 of the 13. Am I getting that right? Like, there are not a lot of late games. Boston and the Clippers, prior to Paul George news, was not an environment I think we wanted to get all over. But let's use this as an opportunity to pivot into Orlando and Sacramento, which you had brought up.
Sure. Just to kind of close out that point on Portland, I think that he'd get over 1% because I think there's people putting some DSJ into their lineups and can swap down up from Powell, etc. But Orlando at Sacramento. Orlando actually projecting for over 100 points today, which is not something that you see today. 108 actually, so a massive team total.
What a goal!
In the context of this 2021-22 Orlando Magic roster, and some interesting prices on DraftKings. What stands out to me, Eddie, is Cole Anthony dropping down a little bit to 7.6. I think is really interesting in tournaments. But Mo Bamba at 6.2, I'm a pretty big fan of.
Yep, I agree with you entirely. I have him nominally preference over Nurk, for example. Someone asked a while ago. Like I would rather get Bamba in there for me. Coming off a dreadful fucking game, the Warrior game. But yeah, it's outstanding spot. Just putbacks and Sacramento's absolute balls at managing any of that.
Yeah, and I've seen I've gotten a couple questions about our guy Franz, who's up to 5.8 now. Or I should say down to 5.8 because he was 6K flat last game, and he's been pretty great, especially from a consistency standpoint.
I think Franz Wagner is very good.
Yeah, I just don't think he's going to continue to shoot this well. Like 47% in his last 5 games. Like, I guess that's not crazy.
Yeah. I mean, he's playing over his head a little bit. I mean, the nice stuff is that he's got, like, they're really letting him do a lot of different things.
Yeah.
Like, is where you're getting point Wagner and point forward Wagner, and like, there's just all sorts of.
No less than 5 assists in each of his last 4 games.
Yeah. He's really getting out there and winging the ball around. But so you asked about Orlando and Sacktown.
Yeah.
It's a very high point total for an Orlando game. Was 222, 223 or something this morning.
Yeah.
Do we have any injury news on Barnes and Harkless. I think they were both questionable. I expected Barnes back, but not Harkless when I did my initial run. Because there's some Terence Davis questions and some other, pending things that link there. How about Terence Davis going? Like you and I had Terence Davis questions last Wednesday, and I will say I don't think we got that done well. Like I was like, I don't know, it's Terence Davis again. Dear Christ, he put together a couple games after that.
Yeah, I mean, he had been such shit before that. Like, actually, I guess I'm mistaken. Like, what am I missing here? The game he fouled out. I'm confused about Terence Davis. I think the game. Yeah. Okay. So he had the foul trouble, and then he went to the locker room on the 28th. Played 17 minutes.
Yep.
Only 15 the night after that, but produced really well. And then we poo-pooed him against the Clippers, and he did fucking fantastic twice in a row.
Yes. Oh, but someone asked, and that guy deserves credit. What do you think about Terence Davis? And I'm like, I just right now have I poo-pooed the minutes.
Yeah.
Like I was in the situation, there's obviously an upside matchup with the Clippers. I didn't mind, but I was just like, I'm at like 21 minutes. It's really hard for me to get there on a Wednesday. And
Superdraft
question. All right.
And this is actually something that I'm going to do in my listener league lineup tonight if it comes to pass. Swap DSJ out for Anthony Simons if Simons is in. I believe Simons still carrying like 1.8x or something like that over there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, 1.8x.
My highest players on Superdraft. Chris Boucher, very good, by the way. So feel free with Chris Boucher on Superdraft at 1.85. That's going to be fun. How y'all feeling about my 24-minute projection now? Huh? I can't believe I couldn't get you into a super. I don't get to play anymore. I can't believe I couldn't get you into a fucking Chris Boucher bet.
Because I like him too.
Last game, I'm like, I don't. What do I do? What is the deal with this ownership? I'm going to look at it, but it's FanDuel, and I'm a part-time player these days, so I'm not going to. What is the deal with this ownership? I'm looking. 1.8% on Vooch. Well, you get one center on FanDuel, I am told. And, Cleveland not the best Vooch matchup. Jared Allen has guarded him well over the years. They've played each other a number of times. So, okay. Seth Curry at 2.1. Once Maxey came back, that seems appropriate to me. Kelly Oubre at 29. That's a number. I'd have to look at the positionality on FanDuel. He's a small forward, very much a thing there. I don't think it says his price here, which I don't really need to know. But I'm not shocked to see it coming off, obviously, a massive game, good position. So, like, assuming he cost 7 something on FanDuel, I like Kelly Oubre at that number. Nick Richards, yeah, none of this ownership seems crazy for me. I like Hayward a little better. I should have gotten a Hayward Oubre bet against you because you said you slightly prefer that. They're obviously going tete-a-tete right now. I liked Hayward more as a play because I had them projected pretty close to identical, and I thought Oubre was going to be much higher owned. On FanDuel, even though they're both small forwards only, I don't know the pricing difference, but Oubre 29%, Gordon Hayward 3.4. It's just, even at like 29 and 10, I would have preferred Hayward. So
we did get a little bit of news here. Josh Hart is in for the Pelicans. Graham, Hart, Ingram, Herb Jones, J Val, the starting 5 there. George Hill ruled out for the Bucks. Jokic confirmed starting.
Sorry, you said Herbie. I got to get that.
Yeah.
I got to get through a whole thing. We did Bane before today. What a lovely voice. We got to get the whole. For those who didn't see the Monday show, did you see my Monday show, Jack? Did you tune in? Were you a Patriot?
I did at halftime. Oh yeah.
Did you come in at halftime?
Yeah.
I have a Monday halftime show now. 15 minutes. Superdraft. We gave away like $4,000 and stuff. By the way, you should play on Superdraft and at least watch the show. Give away some good stuff. But I need more vocal cue.
I think Easy B was one of the people that won a $20 contest ticket.
Did he really?
Halftime show. Yeah.
Get those beans. Referring to Vooch. Yeah, you get one center on FanDuel. So there are 20 good centers tonight, and the matchup isn't particularly but I liked him. If you looked at that last Bulls non-DeRozan game, you had fucking 23 shots for Levine, 24 for Vooch.
Mm-hmm.
It's a real fucking number. So it's always going to come down to price. So 1.8% does feel nominally low, but at that point, 2% versus 4%. How do we watch it? Well, it's twitch.tv/Superdraft DFS.
Eddie, do you want to do Hayward and Oubre? I'm spotting you a half DK point right now.
I'm up right now?
Yeah.
All right, go ahead. I want to give you opportunities.
Oubre just got an assist.
Cheater.
So he's at 6, 10.75 for Oubre, 9.5 for Hayward.
I'll still take it. Go put on.
All right.
I'll
There we go. We got 3 now.
I'll spot you. This is like, so there's another. So if you saw my co-host on the show, his name is Ricky Stroud. Ricky Stroud is our vice president of player development. And Ricky Stroud and I were standing in the gym at the Cosmopolitan Hotel Casino in Las Vegas not long ago. And went, wow, we're getting old and fat. So we hopped on the scale and Ricky weighed in at a hot 242.1 pounds. And I tipped the scales at a hot 243.7 pounds. And we went, okay, here's the deal. Bet $500 a pound, race to 215 pounds. So it's whoever can get to 215 first.
Mm-hmm.
And I immediately shifted into overdrive. And he just like ate donuts and watched me. It was one of the cruelest things ever. I think it's the best money he ever spent. It took me a long time to lose those 28.7 pounds. But I was reminded of it because I was spotting you a couple points with Oubre and Hayward. And Ricky, 10 years my junior, I spotted 1.5 pounds. Also shorter than me by an inch or two. No, I already got there. I'm back up to like 223 or 224. I hit my 215. That bet was week 1 of NFL. I hit my 215 the day before Thanksgiving. Thank Christ. Please no, not like this. What is Uzi? Oubre might have just committed a flagrant. Uh-oh. Somebody's losing.
All right, flagrant 1.
Flagrant 1?
All good.
I don't know.
He's also 1 for 7, Eddie, so.
That does not make me like my odds. Let's get an update on Ayo Sumu. Still 2 fantasy points. How are we feeling about that? 2.
Yeah, picked up 2 fouls. So he'll be fine.
Oh, yeah, sure. He can have 24 3/4.
Question here about the Superdraft stream. How do we watch that? I know you posted in the Discord channels for FTN on Monday, but I think it's the Superdraft Twitch channel.
You can watch it a lot of places. We simulcast it or whatever. We had a couple hundred people total and like 100 concurrents, but it's twitch.tv/Superdraft DFS. Any chance Horford rests on the back-to-back? Yeah, there's a real chance. They've talked about it. Specifically, Udoka came out and said, yeah, we plan on continuing, like at the last press conference, we plan on continuing to do that. We can play him more minutes when he plays if we continue to rest him as appropriate. So, yes, there's a very decent chance they rest him. I mean, if Horford sits, Williams is going to become a great GPP play, especially in this matchup. And Grant Williams will be in play for like short slate value. It's really basically what will change there.
I think I mentioned Will Barton is in and starting. Morris, Barton, Aaron Gordon, Jeff Green, Nikola Jokic. So no surprises for the Nuggets. One thing we really didn't touch on yet was Paul George's questionable status. So if he does indeed sit here, how do you attack these very cheap Clippers on DraftKings?
Yeah, so it's the elbow again, I think, for PG-13, and
correct.
Do you run a little projection in the event?
Only missed 1 game this year, I believe. A couple games back.
George, I can only think of one. It's interesting. It's an island game for them. I don't think he does sit, by the way. But let me spend another minute on that. Actually, I'm gonna take 90 seconds and news tank, and then I'll spend 10 more minutes, and then I gotta run. But sure. Some of their favorite plays on Superdraft. Yeah, I still have Harden on the top there. Just at he actually has a nickel. I think he's 1/5.
Yeah.
So him, Embiid already started. Boucher was up there for me. Cade Cunningham has 1.3 or 1.4, somewhere in there. That made that very reasonable.
Yeah, 1.35 there.
Kristaps, if Luka is out, was on my list.
Yeah.
Tatum at 1.15 with Brown still out. Those are some of my
Speaking of Porzingis and Luka, we don't have Luka news, and that game locks in 30 minutes.
Interesting.
Yeah. I mean, not great for your swaps, right? With the Toronto guys locking here, your Brooklyn and Houston guys locking here in 30 seconds. Not ideal. Actually, no, Brooklyn and Houston is at the top of the hour. Milwaukee, Miami guys, OKC, Toronto guys locked. Now, Wolves will start Pat Beverly, Ant Edwards, Taurean Prince, Jared Vanderbilt, and Karl Anthony Towns.
I was expecting.
I think if Paul George does sit, I love Terrence Mann. He's like 4K now.
I mean, it'll take a minute. I don't have any of my...
His minutes have just been getting crushed by the return of my best friend there.
Yeah. He's my best friend. Yes, he's at one game this year. So I'm going back for some historicity here.
Mm-hmm. Bones Highland is listed available to play. As expected, he was probable.
Yeah. No, I thought he'd get on there. I think it was doubtful at the start of the day, but they upped him. Powell or Dennis Smith on Superdraft? Boucher 23%. Nice.
Well, that's FanDuel. We'll check out
36% and DK 20 maxes. Yeah, well, they're giving me information. I guess I won't play the game.
Yeah, I'll pull up here.
All right, you can just pull it up and read it.
Luka is in. There you go.
There you go.
Nets will start Harden, Mills, Bembry, James Johnson, and Nick Claxton. So Bruce Brown not getting in that starting lineup as I expected.
Yeah, I thought that was real possible. Like, is there any way you could post a projection with Paul George sitting? Oh. I'm going to be honest with you here. I got on my last meeting last night at 11:45. Got up this morning and started researching this shit. Did whatever. And my daughter has an English project, which is worth 500 points out of 1,000 on the quarter, due tomorrow, which requires her to write a song. And she has to write a song about the novel Me and Earl and the Dying Girl, also turned into a 2015 feature film. And I, being known as the notable songbird in the family, have been tasked with this task. So I have to write a music and lyrics of a song, teach it to my daughter, have her record it, write down the sheet music, and have her submit it tonight. And at 7:30, and my wife already came downstairs and gave me the look. So maybe I can come up with that's typical. Maybe I can get a couple hours into this, then I can run back as we get close to that. And I think Paul George plays also. Get on the record.
Armani Brooks will get the start in place of Daniel Tice alongside Eric Gordon, Garrison Matthews, Jay Sean Tate, and Christian Wood. That bumps Armani Brooks at 3.8 to a 9 for me on DraftKings. What say you?
I assumed he was starting, but I would have had him at a 9 anyway.
Gotcha.
I had him projected slightly higher than, but just soon move for a point. For 100 more. Boucher doesn't murder you tonight. I don't think you're going to be disappointed. Remember who they're playing, guys. I guess maybe Boucher playing mid-20s. I mean, it's at $3,200. I think Boucher is going to murder you. He might murder people who didn't play him. Obviously, he can flake, but that's a real hard spot to flake in, kids. There's a chance he plays 30 minutes. If they run really big across there and you get lots of Roby and JRE and whatever the fuck, any guesses on Luke ownership? Fucking low. If only hindsight was foresight. That's very fair. That's very fair. But anyhow, it sucks. But the two ways to win in NBA DFS that most of the Sharks don't do, and it's the reason that if you look at the 10 best DFS players in the world, fewer of them are good at basketball than any other sport. More of them are better at football and better at baseball. Because you can win with a spreadsheet, and those are math and spreadsheet guys. And there's nothing wrong with that. But they try to play 5 sports at a time and do this and that and the other thing, and then just be like, I'm just going to spreadsheet my way through basketball. You can do that and maybe even be a little bit profitable. But, it's knowing some shit about basketball, paying attention to the right things, and not betting the same amount every day. I constantly have this. Another thing I have every 6 months or a year is vary the size of your bet. I don't understand how this is even argued by anyone, but I had another really intelligent person argue with me on Twitter recently this year where I was like, yeah, it's really important to change the size of your bet by day. And basketball, they're like, really? Why? And I'm like, to me, it's one of two real edges that are left. Maybe the most important one is the ability to, if you're playing $1,000 a day, be like, oh shit, there's going to be 20% dead money, which happens more in basketball than every other sport combined. Mm-hmm. I'm going to bet $5,000. And the fact that people don't get that just shocks me. Like, if you ever played poker, I know I'm winning. Like, poker is about two things: knowing when you're winning and getting paid off when you are. You're going to get fucking paid off if you're like, wow, I play $1,000 every day. Today there was no advantage, and my EV on DraftKings is $882 for my $1,000. And the next day, oh shit, Chris Boucher unexpectedly got announced starting, and my EV is probably now up to 98 cents. I'll bet the same amount. And then, oh shit, with 1 minute before lock, James Harden just got announced that he will rest on the back-to-back. And if I could make the changes appropriately, my EV went to from $1,000 kicking you back $900 to $1,000, my EV would be $1,700. And if you go, cool, I'll still bet $1,000, you're a fucking idiot. Like, I don't know, it drives me insane. So, yeah. Pay him, pay that man his money. Like, you'll watch a great story. Watch the Matt Damon interview where he talks about that scene. He's like, so this was like a smaller indie film, and guys were coming up. We were really excited. Like, people are like, oh, Malkovich is coming. We're really excited. So he shows up, and we're hanging out, and people are still very arm's length because it's John Malkovich. And we go in there, and we go to film the first scene, and I'm playing, Mike McDeer, and I'm playing it really, close to the chest and very simple. And John Malkovich sits down across from me, and like, we haven't done any rehearsals or anything. He's just coming in cold, and he does his first line. He's like, "Oh, if you don't have my money, then you are mine." And I'm like, the fuck was that? It's just a really funny sequence there. It's a toss-up for me now. Eddie would take JJ. It's not a toss-up for me. It's JJ by quite a bit. Yeah, like I was low on, like, I had Brown in the 20s in minutes. Everyone else is like, isn't he going to start and play 35 minutes? I'm like, maybe. He's still fine. I just think he was also, a lot of people more were sort of going to own him. Like, I think Bruce Brown was going to be owned 30%.
Mm-hmm. And if he came out in the starting lineup, for sure.
He's now going to be owned 19% or something, like enough of a number. And he's guard forward eligible, that plays in. And there's a lot going on there. But again, very Dosunmu, where not giant upside guy. That isn't to say that we haven't had Bruce Brown upside games, but generally, like, I didn't hate it. It was fine.
Would you neck Ted or Claxton? Now it's Claxton for me.
Yeah, I think I go with that. Then you are mine.
Single entry on DK. Mm-hmm. This is for our good buddy Tyreek. Jokic, Armani Brooks, Terrence Mann, or Rudy Gobert, Wendell Carter Jr., and Norman Powell. It's very much the first one for me if Paul George sits, but I don't want really any part of Terrence Mann if George is in.
Give me a second. I'm working on I didn't fully listen, and I don't want to talk about someone else's money without, knowing what the fuck I'm talking about. Then you are mine. I've got Malkovich stuck in my head now. Yeah, I mean, Luka at now 1% ownership is going to be pretty fun. Mm-hmm. The highest player on the slate. He's like,
Alizé Johnson on the court for the Bulls.
Step off the bus with the Alizé.
Mm-hmm. Hold up, player.
Hold up,
what you diggity doing here?
Diggity doggy style. Yeah, fucking. Oh, good.
Cat or Tatum for cash single entry?
Tatum. I like get Cat. There's just too many chances. Like, he's fucked up. Like, there's 10% chance Cat goes to the locker room, or 20%, or like there's a very reasonable fucking chance. I can't do it. I cannot do it, Captain. This thing is huge. It's got its own weather system.
Bowl available to play.
Oh boy, the virus
Slate
is
shifting.
boom. Oh shit.
Derek Jones Jr. also only 2 fantasy points in his 10 minutes.
No, I like Bruce Brown more now than I did earlier in the show. So I was like, so no Bruce Brown now? I'm like, I like him more now. His projection is going to not change that much for me. And I thought he was going to be 30% owned, and that's not going to be 17. I like him more now. If you want to play Bruce Brown, I'm a bigger fan than I was 20 minutes ago. So I won't tell you to stop. Now I think he's much more. Before I think he was going to be over-owned. So yeah, by all means, get some Brown on you. What can Brown do for you?
I'll go, unless you want to guess, I can go ahead and read off the ownership we had.
No, go ahead and read off the ownership. As much as I like setting the show sideways just for my ego, that is fun. That is fun. But
this is obviously, what was it? Toronto and OKC, Milwaukee and Miami, the 2 games that locked 10 minutes ago. Chris Boucher in the main GPP on DraftKings is 45% flat.
Fucking hell.
That's a lot.
45.
Yeah.
That's very disappointing for me.
Tyler Hero still held 23% there. Again, I thought it was nothing much changed for me when he was announced coming off the bench. Kyle Lowry, 14%. Giannis, 8%. Lou Dort, 5%, followed by, I guess, PJ Washington locked at 7%, but he's also 5%. Haven't scored yet when I downloaded this CSV. Caleb Martin, 4%. O'Shea Brissett held 3.6%. I kind of felt like his minutes increased last game. While he has gotten minutes increases the last 3 games, I thought that was kind of matchup based in the Pacers last
Someone
game.
says, would you put Luka over Joker? I'm going to interrupt to just say, I still have Jokic projected higher by quite a bit, but I would probably rather put Luka in one lineup because Jokic will be approximately 12 times as highly owned or something.
Yeah. This is a good one here. Claxton, Dylan Brooks, or Armani Brooks and Harrison Barnes. I'm leaning the first one, but
I think I like the second one in the spot and waiting with the money. But yeah, I would play the first one more often. I think it is fun to see exactly what happens with news as we get into the late slate. So no strong preference. But
Heald or Franz Wagner? Wagner for me.
A game I really like getting a piece of, but it's I'll go Franz Wagner. It's close. I like Wendell Carter Jr. a lot in that game too. Like, he's just been really consistently scoring, and the matchup is really good. Rather get to Bamba more often than not, but center spots are really tough now.
OKC Toronto has tipped off. Milwaukee at Miami is the ESPN game tonight. The first one, Portland at Golden State, the nightcap. Chris Boucher, 2 points in his first minute.
Sure.
Scotty Barnes, 2 boards and an assist. Pascal Siakam also scored off a Chris Boucher rebound.
The dudes are emerging.
Dudes are emerging. Darius Beasley, who I think was down to 3-9 today, 4 points and a steal in his 2 minutes. So good start for Baz.
Good on him. Embiid doing a little bit of stuff. No real surprise there. Let's look at our boys. Kelly Oubre, 2 for 10 from the field. Gordon Hayward, 4 for 8.
2 for 10.
But Kelly Oubre with
11 minutes.
Kelly Oubre with 6 rebounds, 2 assists, and a steal to still be winning our competition by quite a bit. Even if he can't hit the broadside of a fucking barn. 1 for 7 from 3. He's got 5 points, 6 rebounds, 2 assists, and a steal. So that's 7, 10, 17 and a half fantasy points, I think. Gordon Hayward with 11 and a half, if I'm mathing right. You are beating me convincingly.
Io has not checked back in yet, so still sitting at 2 fantasy points with 9 minutes remaining in the first half.
I'm liking my chance in that one.
It's gonna be a big time closing performance for Io tonight. Huge second half inbound.
Yeah, coach knows that he thrives on prime time, so he's gonna get him. They're also down 13, which is probably good for him. Anything that possibly gets Levine and Vooch off the court, like he's a shooting guard. You want him to shoot, then
Yeah. Just came back in for Dotson. I was wondering how long Billy was gonna run Dotson out there.
Scotty Barnes is Boucher block, Boucher bucket, Boucher miss, Boucher. Yeah, keep an eye on my boy. I'm just saying, keep an eye on my boy. Why couldn't they come out with that news at like 7:25 or after lock or something? Like,
yeah.
I'm amazed that did that news not come out until like 7:02? I feel like it was after.
It was right after the main lock.
Right. And still he got up to 40 whatever percent. Giddy.
Let's see, Tatum and DSJ can move to Simons if Simons is in, or Jokic and Garrison Matthews. Tatum DSJ for me.
Tatum DSJ. Yeah, you had another question before that I half asked because I wanted to listen to the whole thing. So say again.
That was Tyreek a few minutes ago. It's a 3v3. Jokic, Armani Brooks, and Terrence Mann, or Rudy Gobert, Wendell Carter Jr., Norm Powell.
It is difficult to appropriately. So it is the second one if Paul George is in, and so it's very complicated because I'm trying to figure out what you have to lock and when. You understand what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, right now I think you have to hold on the second one.
Yeah, I agree. Little bit off topic. We did get Pascal Siakam at 2.45% on DK.
It's really low. And the game's even through 4 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, he'll have that game stamps close. He's going to be pretty good.
Mm-hmm. Scotty Barnes, 0.8%. Not that he should have carried a ton of ownership, but that's pretty nice. Same with Fred VanVleet.
Yeah. Yeah.
Giddy, 0.7. Julius Randle, 0.6.
You know who's good, though? Chris Boucher.
He is that.
At fantasy, anyway.
Yeah. Important qualifier there.
Yeah.
Also old in NBA terms.
Yeah, he's 26 or whatever. I mean, he's not a baby.
He might be a little older. 28, yeah.
Yeah. Wow.
Well, I got a super draft question for you here. Would you Ant Edwards at 1.25, or would you Malik Beasley 1.85?
I would Ant Edwards.
That's what I got right now.
Yep. I'm a fan of Beasles on DK, but you can't you just can't play someone who doesn't project for 30 fantasy points. Yeah. In raw points on Superdraft. So if you have anyone under 30, you just basically can never play them. 2-3 game slates. It can be a little weird. There's times when the number you're trying to hit is 50 or 55. But on a slate this big, you need to think you're going to get 60 out of a guy. So if he's, or at least somewhere kind of close to that, well over 50. So I don't think you can reasonably project Beasley on a median for more than I'll say 25. So there's not he's not out of play. Clearly, they're in a situation where we can get there, but it's not like the matchup is outstanding. So Curry or Luka, I would play Luka. I think the whole, I don't know. I like a good narrative sometimes. Again, I think just because I can't quantify it doesn't mean we shouldn't do it. But I think there's a chance they just beat the shit out of them. And again, you're literally, people are like, do you think Curry gets the record? It's like, do I think this one man in this one game has the greatest shooting performance in the history of the league while the game stays close enough against a team with no good players that he has time to do that? No, I'll take the under 50-50. That incredibly rare event happens here.
Oh. Oh, man. Winky asked me, noose or slit wrist? And I replied, Jesus, but I didn't see the qualifier. He said I need something super quick because I can't watch this Bulls lineup any longer.
Well, then, I mean, it depends. All right, first of all, go down the tracks, not across. But second, so morbid. I don't want to talk about this. Yeah. So, Four Roses or Jack. Luka 9,900 and FanDuel, that's the lowest I've seen. Yeah. I mean, it's not 100%. He's as these slate options open up. But yeah, he's just not going to be owned.
Mm-hmm.
But it's just like people are like, oh, you get Towns at really low ownership. It's like, yeah, but like, don't I just want Gobert at that point? Like, if I'm gonna go for, like, I feel like the upside isn't quite there, and you can get Towns ceiling games against centers who stay home a lot, but there's a lot going on there, and Towns looks a little rickety at the moment. So I know he's a warrior, but all right, Raptors full timeout. 5 minutes into the game. Chris Boucher, a little disappointing, only 1.4 fantasy points per minute. For a $3,200 guy, not tolerable. 40 whatever the fuck percent. God damn it.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, don't get me wrong. We should have 100. It's a pretty good advantage.
Mm-hmm.
Half the field very possibly fade. Like once they announced him starting, I don't know what you project him for other than the bet. Like, I had him as the best value play at the start of the show. I'm just like, yeah, Boucher is the best value play. I don't think he ends up being that owned again. I would have had him as the best value play if he didn't start. So, at the start of the show, I would have had 50% to the field's 18. If they announced him starting, I probably would have had 100% to the field's 45.
IO assist. Bang.
Oh, boom.
3.5 DK points in his 8 minutes.
All right, there you go.
Still 6.5 to go in the first half.
Yeah, he can get there. It took him under 25. That's at this point he would still project for close to that. Like, now he projects for 20 instead of 24 for me. Like, it's still a 3-pointer from whatever.
Sure.
All right, I should go. I have to be a parent. I told them I would do a quick show. I kept it to 1 hour and 50 minutes.
That is quick for us.
I'm not the good show. Triple J or Nurk? Nurk for the ownership. Like, he's Nurk center only. So on DK and GPPs, there's just going to be not a lot of him. He's late slot. So I like Triple J a lot too. And he's forward eligible. So, like, that's useful. If you're going that for, I think a real person to put in there is Wendell Carter Jr., by the way. I don't know who you have in what teams, but that's also a late game, and he's also power forward center eligible. I may have him. I like this matchup for him quite a bit. Not quite as much as Bamba, but I'm going to refresh this. I may have him projected for lower ownership and higher fantasy points than Triple J. So give me a second here. Let's see. Jaren Jackson Jr. right now I have for 31 minutes and 34.25 fantasy points. And Wendell Carter Jr. I have for 32 minutes and 35.5 fantasy points. So I would play Wendell Carter Jr. over either of those guys in that spot. And I, again, think there's nominal ownership there. They're all projecting pretty close. I have Yusuf Nurkic for 27 minutes and 35 fantasy points exactly. So I have them all within a point. So you're sort of playing ownership game there. And Nurk may still end up being lowest because the others are forward eligible. I don't have a strong preference there, but I think I would Wendell over Jaren. But again, project close enough that Scotch or bourbon. Boucher 91% owned in your double up. Okay, nice. Well, you're playing on no rake then. Double ups are about 9% rake. Nicely done. Like, there's no reason not to have him in cash once you're starting. Like in a double up, you're just wrong. He's forward eligible.
Yeah.
If he was center, you're like, well, I can get around, and like there's guys like, Scotch or bourbon. I keep it clear. I'm a vodka man, so I've had plenty of Scotch and whiskey and what have you. But...
Bourbon for me.
Bourbon for you?
Yeah. Last question here before we get out of here on DK. Would you Dennis Smith Jr. or Simons, depending on who's in? So one of those Portland guys or Dylan Brooks?
It's going to depend on correlation. If I have the starting guy in Portland, if I have any Draymond or Wiggins or Curry or any of that shit, then I'm going to go with the... Other than that, I'd probably let that game go, hope it turns into an absolute shit show, and play Dylan Brooks. So more often than not, I think I would play Dylan Brooks. So
I would also
think I would have someone from that game more often than not, but so Dylan Brooks more often for me. But if I had Curry in that lineup, then definitely Simons or what have you.
Yeah. couple other questions coming in, but I'll get to them after we sign off. So, Eddie, always a pleasure.
Are you ready to queue? Are you ready to queue? Watch as we upgrade the show. We're constantly looking at ways to impress you here, and look at these marginal changes we make every day to make the show quality higher. So, Thomas, you're on deck. Are you paying attention?
Say, if your name's Braden, you can pay attention to this part of the show. So that'll do it for us. A little under 2 hours for Live with Fast Eddie Fear. Again, you can sign up at FTN with code FTNTV, gets you 15% off your subscription here. You can sign up at Superdraft with code FTN. That gives you $100 in bonus funds on deposits of $100 or more. So now that that's out of the way, we will bow out. I will see everybody in chat, especially for those late 3 games. So for Eddie, I'm Zach. Shout out Thomas, our producer extraordinaire. And as always,
let's get these beans.